This is Morgan Beatty speaking for Alka-Seltzer, bringing you News of the World Night Special. Tonight, Washington exclusive preview of the Marshall Plan by detail. London, by-election with a meaning all its own. Vancouver, drama and tragedy on the shores of the Pacific Northwest. Hollywood, preview of Santa Claus. More scandal in high places. Those are the headlines. I'll be back in a moment with News of the World.
By November of 1947, nearly 11 million babies had been born in the United States since the end of World War II. Young parents were staying home with their children. The 1947-48 season had the largest radio audience in history. Homes with radios jumped 6%, car radios 29%. The major networks, NBC, CBS, ABC, and the Mutual Broadcasting System, added 147 new affiliates. Network revenues topped $200 million.
How about it, friends? Everything all set for the big Thanksgiving feast tomorrow? Well, let's have a look at that market basket.
On the eve of Thanksgiving, as NBC broadcast News of the World with Morgan Beatty, the United States was a country in transition. World War II had created fundamental changes in society. While men of all races and creeds were overseas spilling the same colored blood, women had mobilized and taken charge of the workforce. When veterans collected enough points for an honorable discharge, they returned home with different ideals and what we now call PTSD. As new cars, roads, and homes brought young families to the suburbs, racial discrimination came to the forefront in the face of the GI Bill, where a much higher percentage of white Americans were having their applications accepted.
And here are signs of our times. New York, James C. Petrillo has lifted a musicians' union ruling that has prevented the use of musicians on cooperative radio network programs. The ruling provided that in every such case, a standby musician had to be hired in every city where the program was heard. Standbys will not have to be hired any longer.
Americans were organizing. In the year after VJ Day, more than 5 million struck for better wages and benefits. This debilitated key sectors of the economy and stifled production. Consumer goods in high demand were slow to appear on shelves and in showrooms. It frustrated Americans who desperately wanted to purchase items they had forsaken during the war. It caused the largest inflation rise in the country's modern history, and the Taft-Hartley Act, limiting the power of labor unions. President Truman was seemingly at odds with Congress over every domestic policy, and his approval rating sank to 32%.
The special edition of News of the World presents tonight a complete preview of the long-range Marshall Plan, nearly a week before it goes to Congress. The overall plan, as advertised, is $16 to $20 billion spread over 4 years. Now, the breakdown. Emergency aid between December the 1st and March the 31st, $597 million for France, Italy, and Austria. That's the $597 million you're hearing about these days. $500 million to cover the additional cost of occupation of Germany until March the 31st. We're shouldering some or most of Britain's obligations in Germany, and $60 million interim aid to China. Add them up, and the total of emergency aid, that is only to March the 31st, by official estimate is $2,657 million, up to, as we said, April the 1st.
The U.S. war debt had topped $240 billion. Because the nation emerged as one of the world's leaders, America was expected to have the largest hand in rebuilding Europe. On the eve of Thanksgiving, news outlets reported that, in order to stabilize Europe, Americans should be ready to resume sacrifices they made during the war. Not agreeing to do so could result in political enemies taking over the continent.
Hollywood. RKO Studios has announced that producer Adrian Scott and director Edward Dmytryk have been dismissed because they refused to tell the Congressional Un-American Activities Committee whether or not they were communists.
The changing world stoked people's fears. Anti-communism was abound. On Monday, November 24th, the House Committee on Un-American Activities declared a list of unfriendly witnesses who had refused to answer questions about alleged communist influence within the film industry. These witnesses became the Hollywood 10. Internationally, Princess Elizabeth married Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, on November 20th in a ceremony at Westminster Abbey. It was recorded and broadcast by BBC Radio to 200 million people around the world. And 2 days after Thanksgiving, the UN voted to partition Palestine into independent Arab and Jewish states, with Jerusalem the only neutral ground. Immediately after, a civil war broke out, and the original plan was never fully adopted. But Thanksgiving has long been a time to pause all internal and external conflicts if possible, and allow the spirit of gratitude into our homes and lives. The day prior is also the busiest travel day of the year. Thanksgiving 1947 was no different.
It's the night before Thanksgiving, and all through movie land, the word has got around that Santa Claus has come to town. Even that bad widow boy, Junior, found out about it, and Red Skelton did it again. He just threw a tremendous master switch to turn on the greatest concentration of light ever seen in a nighttime parade. I'm standing on the famous terrace at Hollywood's Radio City at Sunset and Vine. As Red threw that switch, the most famous movie and radio stars in the world congregated before me to start their annual Parade of Stars down Hollywood Boulevard.
On Wednesday, November 26th, the annual Hollywood Christmas Parade was taking place in Los Angeles. Each November, beginning in 1928, extravagant holiday decorations adorned a 1-mile stretch of Hollywood Boulevard between Vine and La Brea. The brainchild of businessman Harry Blaine and the Hollywood Boulevard Association. They promoted the thoroughfare as the world's largest department store. It was complete with lights, a reindeer-drawn sleigh, and brightly decorated Christmas trees. News of the World was there on Sunset and Vine reporting.
But Santa has his own trouble. He has to ride with Jack Benny. And if Benny never rides again, he admits his beautiful float is far better than his old Maxwell ever was. And scrambling off his float up here to a microphone is Ralph Edwards, the man who knows. Ralph, what's on your mind?
Second for Santa Claus, first for me, 13 for wreath, 7 for tree. Bring me an auto, a book, and a ball, and I'll say Merry Christmas in spring, not in fall.
Thank you, Ralph Edwards. Right before me is Fibber McGee and Molly on a replica.
It was an event that connected average Americans with celebrities. It reminded people that together, we are better than we are alone. And for many, the annual Santa Parade was for them what it will be for us tonight. The start of the holiday season.